Hello, dear friend. Sometimes we, parents, are so enthusiastic about trying to put our child on the right path that we don't notice how we set traps for him ourselves, sometimes completely invisible ones. Traps of comparison, excessive expectations, quiet resentment that he didn't live up to our hopes. But deep down, we're just afraid for him. We want to protect him, we want to be proud, we want to believe that he'll do better than us. Today, I suggest taking a deeper look at this, about how our words and comparisons can strengthen or destroy a child's inner world, about why we ourselves begin to feel disappointed and tired of endless control, and most importantly, about how everything can be changed, step by step, without any sudden movements, but with the faith that within each family, a bridge of understanding can be rebuilt. If this topic resonates with you, stay with me. This conversation can be the first step to an honest meeting with yourself and your child. Have you ever wondered why we, parents, so often catch ourselves comparing our child with other people's children? Where does this almost automatic "look how Michael did it, but Jenny is different" come from? At first glance, it seems like it's just nitpicking or strictness. But if you dig deeper, it becomes clear the habit of comparing is rooted not only in our character, but also in how we were raised and taught from childhood. Remember school? Grades have always been a measure of success. We were put in line, given tests and leaderboards. Someone is better, someone is worse. It's the same at work, ratings, salary comparisons, positions in the team. Over time, this system begins to live inside us, like an invisible ruler with which we measure not only ourselves, but also our children. And family history also influences us. Sometimes parents compare because they want to give the child what they did not have. They believe that if their son or daughter is better than others, they will avoid the mistakes and pain that they themselves have had. Comparison becomes not a reproach, but a strange form of care, only expressed through criticism. It is interesting that even the culture of competition does its job. In society, success has long been transformed into a showcase. Look at how others are doing is not only about academic performance or behavior. It is about anxiety, about the fear of falling behind. And if you do not understand where this habit comes from, you can torment yourself and your child with unnecessary demands for years. The good news is that the habit of comparing is not a death sentence. It is not innate. You can see it, realize it, and gradually let go. The first step is to honestly notice these moments. When and why you want to say, "but he could do it." Noticing means already starting the path to trust and support without this eternal ruler. Try asking yourself, what do I want to say with this comparison? What am I afraid of? Perhaps there is anxiety hidden behind this, which can be discussed with the child openly, without jabs and insults. Parental anxiety and guilt. Thinking about parental anxiety and guilt, one cannot help but notice how deeply these feelings penetrate the heart of every adult who cares for their children. After all, being a parent is both a great happiness and a huge responsibility, which is often accompanied by internal doubts. Did I do everything right? Did I do any harm? These questions can torment and exhaust, sometimes making you worry even about little things that, it would seem, are of little importance. Guilt is a complex and multifaceted phenomenon. It arises not only from the awareness of mistakes, but also from the fear that our failures will affect the fate of our children, affect their happiness and development. Psychologists note that parental guilt is often intertwined with anxiety for the future, for the child's choices, for his fate. And this is a normal human reaction, showing how deeply we love and how much we care about the lives of our children. However, it is important to understand, guilt left without action becomes a heavy ballast that does not benefit either the parent or the child. As the famous psychotherapist Irina Mladic wrote, guilt without change is emotional fuel for self-criticism, not for growth. If we get stuck in self-flagellation, we lose energy and the opportunity to become better. True strength is in the ability to admit your mistakes and take steps to correct them. This does not mean perfection, but honesty with yourself and with your child. A simple "I was wrong" or "I wasn't always patient" opens the door to dialogue and mutual understanding. It is through this open admission that children learn to accept their own and others' shortcomings, to understand that it is okay to be imperfect. It happens in life that one harsh phrase leaves a scar, but what we do after is even more important. Instead of hushing up or denying, it is worth looking for an opportunity to establish contact, to explain why it happened this way and not otherwise. This process not only heals the child's wound, but also removes the burden from the parent's heart. This is why the process of self-forgiveness and awareness is important. A parent is not a judge, but a guide who learns together with the child. By forgiving ourselves, we open up space for growth and change. Freeing ourselves from the burden of guilt, we become more attentive, tolerant, and sensitive. To sum up, I would like to say, do not be afraid of your mistakes. Do not accumulate guilt, but use it as a beacon that shows where you need to be more attentive and sincere. After all, education is not a path of ideal solutions, but a living process full of love and mutual understanding. How the parental role changes as the child ages. Many parents notice, the older the child gets, the more difficult it is to maintain the old role, the one who decides and directs everything. In childhood and adolescence, control still seems justified, to protect, prompt, direct. But then the child grows up, and with him, our ideas about what it means to be there must grow. When an adult son or daughter is already building a career, family, relationships, the habit of comparing with other people's successes can only push them away. Everything is fine with Petya, and when are you going to? Such phrases, even spoken with good intentions, often hurt more than open criticism. An adult child hears in this a lack of trust in their own choices and pace of life. Psychologists emphasize, with age, parents and children have a chance to build a new form of closeness, not from control, but from partnership. This means that your care is no longer about holding hands, but about being there, listening without unnecessary advice, asking for opinions, respecting someone else's adult freedom. For many parents, this is the hardest part of the journey. The image of a good guide becomes someone you want to come to for a word of support, and not someone you're afraid to disappoint. Instead of an invisible bar, be like someone else. Simple acceptance. You are mine, you are who you are, and I am glad to see how you're looking for your path. If before your role was support and guidance, now it can be a reliable rear. Rear, where an adult child knows. He will not be compared, will not be belittled, will not be forced to fit someone else's standards. This transition is not about indifference, but about mature love, in which there is a place for trust. After all, in the end, the most valuable thing you can leave to your adult children is not a ready-made script, but an inner confidence that there is always a home nearby, where they are accepted without looking back at other people's successes. Emotional burnout of a parent. Of course, the topic of emotional burnout of parents is one of the most pressing and at the same time deeply hidden problems of our time. Being a parent is constant stress, enormous work, and endless responsibility, which sometimes seems like an unbearable burden, especially when an internal struggle with fatigue and exhaustion is added to anxiety about the safety, success, and well-being of the child. Emotional burnout is not just fatigue. This is a state when mental resources are exhausted, and each new demand seems like a mountain that can no longer be lifted. Often, parents themselves do not notice how they switch to autopilot mode, lose patience, become irritable, and begin to control everything and everyone with double the force. Why? Because they subconsciously try to compensate for their fatigue with increased control, as if they say to themselves, if I keep everything under control, I will be able to avoid trouble. But alas, this is a trap. Increased control and comparisons do not create security, but destroy mutual understanding and trust. Moreover, parental burnout often creates a domino effect. Fatigue and anxiety are passed on to children, giving rise to insecurity, fear, and isolation in them. Psychologists note that emotional burnout is a signal from the body and psyche that it is necessary to change the rhythm of life, to rebuild relationships with oneself and with the child. After all, taking care of yourself is not selfishness, but the most important resource for effective parenting. Without this internal nourishment, no efforts will be productive. Eastern philosophy teaches us awareness and balance, principles that help to resist burnout. Meditation, the practice of gratitude, the ability to stop and listen to yourself. All this is not a luxury, but a necessary basis for health and peace. An example from life. One mother, immersed in caring for children and work, noticed that she was constantly irritated and felt an inner emptiness. By setting aside at least 10 minutes a day for a quiet walk and breathing exercises, she not only improved her well-being, but was also able to establish a calmer and warmer contact with her children. Sometimes small changes have a huge effect. What can be done to avoid or overcome burnout? 1. Acknowledge your feelings. Fatigue and anxiety cannot be ignored. 2. Find time for yourself. Let it be a short rest, a hobby, a walk. 3. Learn to delegate. Asking for help does not mean being weak. 4. Reduce the level of control. Trust the child and yourself. 5. Practice mindfulness. It helps to live moments here and now without unnecessary stress. 6. Communicate with other parents. The support of like-minded people is very important. Remember, being a good parent does not mean being perfect. It means being alive, attentive, and caring, but at the same time remembering your own boundaries. This is the only way to preserve the strength and love that will become the support for the whole family. Silent messages, body language, and the atmosphere of the home. The topic of silent messages is one of the most subtle and important in the relationship between parents and children, often remaining out of sight, although it forms the foundation of trust and emotional security in the family. Even if the words seem calm and thoughtful, body language, looks, pauses, intonations, all this conveys much more than we realize. Children are amazing readers of not only words, but also unspoken messages. They sensitively capture any tension, hidden irritation, disappointment, or, conversely, warmth and pride that parents may not even be aware of. Silent messages sometimes speak louder than words. As Carl Jung wrote, "What is not said in words sometimes says more than 1,000 speeches." Hence, an important psychological mechanism. A child learns to interpret the world not only by words, but by the atmosphere at home, by the way parents look, breathe, interact with each other and with him. If there's often hidden criticism, tension, or anxiety in the home, this leaves an imprint on the child's inner world, forming a feeling of insecurity, stress, and even neuroses. At the same time, if the atmosphere is filled with acceptance, warmth, and gentle support, the child feels safe and free to develop. Psychologists and family therapists emphasize working with body language and unspoken signals is the most important step to improving relationships. Parents should pay attention to their own gestures, gaze, tone of voice, what energy they carry even silently. For example, crossed arms, a distant look, or a sharp sigh can be subconsciously perceived by a child as rejection or condemnation, even if the words speak of love and support. An example from life. A mother who constantly repeated to her son, "I love you," but often sighed heavily and turned away during conversations, noticed that the child became withdrawn and talked little about his problems. After she began to work on herself, trying to align her body and express openness even without words, the relationship between them became more trusting and warm. It is important to understand, our silent messages are a mirror of our inner state. If we want the child to feel calm and confident, we ourselves need to work on awareness, managing emotions, and the body. This is not the path to perfection, but to honesty and attentiveness. Tips for getting out of the situation. 1. Learn to be aware of your feelings and reactions. Notice what is happening in the body and how you behave when communicating with the child. 2. Practice slowing down. Give yourself time so as not to react automatically, but with attention and kindness. 3. Pay attention to the eyes. A look can convey care and warmth. 4. Work on open postures. They create a feeling of security. 5. Talk to your child about your feelings. Explain what emotions you are experiencing to reduce misunderstandings. 6. Create rituals of closeness, hugs, joint walks, quiet conversations without haste. Ultimately, silent messages are the language in which a child perceives love and care no less vividly than in words. By realizing them and caring about what we convey without words, we build not only trust and security, but also teach the child to express their feelings and understand others. Working with your expectations. Often, parents, without noticing it, turn their child into a clean copy of their unfulfilled drafts. This is almost always done with the best intentions. We want the child to live an easier, more successful life, richer inside and out. But behind this beautiful screen, there is one important trap. Our dreams may not be their dreams at all. An adult lives his own story with many what-ifs. If only I had been supported then, if only I had been given a chance, if only I had been braver. And this tangle of unfulfilled desires is easily projected onto a son or daughter. So we imperceptibly place the burden of other people's ambitions on the child's shoulders. He begins to feel, I am loved only if I realize this scenario. In psychology, this is called parental projections, when a child becomes a hostage to what adults fail to do. Interestingly, sometimes this manifests itself very softly. I just want you to be better than me. But translated into children's language, it sounds like this. You have no right to be yourself. You must be an improved version of me. Gradually, this can lead to the child losing their own interest in life. Everything that does not correspond to the correct scenario, they hide or abandon. It is important to honestly ask yourself, what I want for my child is actually about me? This is not an easy question, but it is this question that opens the door to freedom for both the parent and the child. In real life, this is like replanting a garden. You plant a tree, but you cannot make it bloom with roses if it is a rowan tree. You can only create conditions, water it, and trim dry branches. The same is with children. Those whose roots are not cut off by other people's dreams grow best. What helps to let go of unnecessary expectations? Firstly, notice what worries you most. Fear of poverty, loneliness, mistakes? Secondly, distinguish. Are these my ambitions or the real interests of my child? Thirdly, ask the child more often, what do you want? How do you see it? When a parent loosens the grip of expectations, the child begins to hear not only the words must, but also can interesting your way. And then, instead of pressure, contact is born. A real one. We're not copies of us grow up, but new, original people. Comparison is one of those traps that is easy to fall into, but hard to get out of. It seems natural, even useful. After all, we want the best for our children, strive for their success and well-being. However, when comparisons become frequent and intrusive, they turn into a source of tension and internal conflict for both the child and the parent. At the heart of such comparisons is fear. Fear that the child will not live up to our expectations or will not fit into the standards set by society. This fear makes us unconsciously put the child in a framework, measure his development by other people's standards, forgetting about his uniqueness. Psychological studies show that constant comparisons lower the child's self-esteem and give rise to a feeling of inferiority. He learns to perceive himself not as a separate person, but as an object of evaluation, which prevents him from revealing his talents and following his interests. Parents, in turn, experience internal disappointment and anxiety because reality does not coincide with their expectations. Refusing to compare is not a reduction in parental demands, but a transition to a deeper form of acceptance and support. Instead of measuring a child's success by someone else's standards, it is important to see and appreciate his individual path. A child does not come to become an extension of you. He comes to become himself, said Carl Jung, emphasizing the need to respect the uniqueness of each. An important step is conscious attention to your own fears and expectations. By asking ourselves questions about what we feel and what we are afraid of, we can better understand the reasons for our behavior and begin to change it. Support, acceptance, and love become a solid foundation on which the child builds self-confidence and strives to develop without fear of condemnation. Thus, refusing to compare is a path to freedom for both parties, an opportunity to develop in harmony and respect. This is not just advice, but the basis for healthy and trusting relationships in the family. Questions for self-reflection of a parent that you need to ask yourself. Sometimes the most important conversation is the one with yourself. Parenting is full of moments when we automatically compare our child to other people's children or to our own expectations. At that moment, it's easy to forget that comparison often hides anxiety and uncertainty, not indifference. Stop for a moment and ask yourself a couple of honest questions. What do I feel when I compare my child? Is it resentment, anxiety for his future, or something else? Recognizing these emotions is already a step towards greater acceptance. What am I afraid of when I don't see in him what I expected? Fear of unjustified hopes, fear of being a bad parent? The more honestly you answer, the easier it will be to stop shifting these feelings onto your child. Now think, what am I proud of in my child? What is so special about him that no one else can repeat? This question brings out everything real and alive, not judgmental, but sincere. And the last, very important one, what would I like my child to feel next to me? Ask it slowly. The answer will show what kind of person you want to be, not a strict judge, but a person who warms with his presence. Psychologists emphasize such simple conversations with yourself teach us to listen deeper to our fears so as not to shift them onto the shoulders of children. After all, there is nothing more frightening for a child than to live with the feeling that he is a project, not a person. Self-reflection is not hard work on mistakes, but an opportunity to love yourself and your child a little more as you are. Not ideal, but real. And if at least one of these thoughts resonated with you, it means that this conversation has already become a step towards mutual understanding. In conclusion of this conversation, I want to remind you, each of us is not perfect. We all make mistakes. We all want the best. And often it is this desire that leads to unnecessary comparisons and unnecessary grievances. But we always have a chance to stop and look at the child differently. Not as a project or a mirror, but as a person to whom we can give the main thing, support and faith in themselves. Let there be a place in your home, not for the race for other people's successes, but for respect, laughter, and small victories that are important to your child. After all, this is where the support is born that will one day help him grow up and go his own way with confidence and gratitude to you. And how do you yourself look at the topic of comparison and trust? What helped you maintain closeness with your child? Leave your thoughts in the comments. It is really important for me to hear each of your voices. Until next time, and may there always be a place for a lively, honest dialogue in your family.